Welcome back to Techline Africa. In this episode, we are going to learn some additional methods that we can use when dealing with arrays and also learn how to update the values in an object. Concept first, then we build. Let's go. An object is a collection of related data grouped under one name. Instead of creating separate variables to store this data, we created only one variable, new task, and that variable is holding all this related data. When a new task is created, the status is set to pending. When the task is completed, we need to change the status from pending to done. We are going to create a function that will toggle the status when the task is completed. Toggle task, which will take the ID as a parameter. We need to find a task based on the ID. And when the task is found, we can change the status to done. What we are doing now is always setting the status to done, but we want to toggle the status. So if it is pending, we want to set it to done. If it is done, we want to set it to pending. We can do that by checking the current status. If it is pending, then we will set it to done. Otherwise, set it to pending. This is what we are doing. We accept the ID as a parameter, and then we use the find method to find any task that is matching the ID that we have received. And we wrap this in a condition to confirm if the task is available. That is because the find method will always return undefined if the task is not available. So we always check if the task is indeed available before we execute this block. In this block, we are using the shorthand version of the if statement called the ternary operator. So the very first part is the condition. We are checking if status is equal to pending. If it is true, then set status to done. Otherwise, set status to pending. After changing the status, we go ahead and display the task again. So we call this function and also update the status count. Let's create another function to delete a task. Which will take the ID as a parameter. And then we check if the index is not equal to -1. Then we use the splice method. And then when we are done, we display the task, update the status count. Remember, we said that every item in an array has an index or a position. So whenever we use the find index method, the idea is to get the position of any task that will match this condition. The find index method will always return -1 if the task is not available. That is why we are doing this comparison. We only execute this block if the index is not equal to -1. The splice method can be used to add, remove, or replace items in an array. And in this case, we are using it to remove an item in an array from this position. So first of all, we get the position, and if it is not equal to -1, we use that position and delete the very first item. Now we've seen how to update a property in an object. We've also seen some additional methods that we can use when dealing with arrays. The find method, splice method, and the find index method. The next step is to update the interface to have our filter buttons. Open your index file and add another container with a class of filters and then a button. and a class of filter-btn. Pending completed. The very first one will have a class of active. Save your work and refresh the page. And now you should have this. The next step is to add our CSS. Open your CSS file and add the following styles. When you are done, save your work and refresh the page. The next step is to click on these filter buttons and apply the filters. Open your script.js file and let's add another function. Then we accept filter and a button as a parameter. We update the current filter and then we reference the document query selector all. This line will basically check the web page and select any element with this class name. And for each of the elements, remove the active class. When you are done, reference the current button that we clicked on and add the active class, then display the list of tasks. We need to invoke this function when the filter button is clicked. So open your index.html file and then let's add an on-click event. So when this button is clicked, we call a function setFilter and then we pass in the current filter all. And then we use the this keyword, which will pass the current button that we clicked on. We do same for the other buttons. Save your work and refresh the page. Now you can toggle between these filter buttons. The last thing that we need to do is actually apply the filter when this button is clicked. Open your JavaScript file and let's add another function. And we are basically going to use the filter function. But first of all, we check if the current filter is equal to all, then we will just return the entire task list. But if the filter is equal to pending, then we are going to filter the current task list. We only return the pending task. We can do same for the other filters. And if all of these conditions are false, we go ahead and return the entire task list. Let's go ahead and call this function inside our main display function, display task function. So instead of logging everything to the console, we can now declare a variable filtered and then call this function and rather log this filtered into the console. Double check this function get filtered task and make sure that the last condition is checking for the priority, not the status. Save your work and then open the browser and refresh your page. We can test it out by adding some task with a priority of high. So you click on add and you can test another and set it to low. Now when you click on high, you get only one item matching that condition. When you click on pending, you get two items matching that condition. If you click on completed, you get empty. We've seen some of the additional functions that we can use when dealing with arrays. We've also seen how to update the properties of an object. In the next video, we are going to understand DOM manipulation and display the task list onto the page. See you in the next video.